This story is called the creation story. Right before the world began, everything was black. The whole place was filled with darkness. There was nothing. The world didn't really exist until God decided that He would create the earth. And this is how He did it. It took God 7 days to finish making our world. And this is what He did on each day. Day 1, God put light into the world. So there was darkness, but there was also light. On day 2, God made the sky and the sea. On day 3, God made the land rise up out of the sea so that there were mountains and hills. And on day 4, God commanded the sun to shine in the daytime, and then He commanded the stars and the moon to shine at night time. On day 5, God thought the world was a bit quiet, so He put birds to live in the sky and He put sea creatures to live in the sea. On day 6, God made animals to live on the land, and then He made Adam and Eve. They were the first people to live on the earth. And Adam and Eve had the job of looking after this wonderful world that God had made. They would rule over all of the animals and over all of the land. And then on day 7, God looked at the world that He had made and He loved it. He was really pleased. And this is the first part of God's big story. This is where God's story began. God had made the world and He was pleased with everything in it. And He loved it. Now, God made Adam and Eve to be people, to be a bit like Him. He made them in His own image, which means that if He was down on earth, He would be like the people. And so God loved Adam and Eve loved God, and Adam and Eve loved each other. Let's put these over here so we can see what happened next in the wonderful world that God had made. Adam and Eve were very happy living in the garden that God had given them. The garden was beautiful. It had lovely flowers. It had everything that Adam and Eve needed. It even had food for them to eat. God said to Adam and Eve they could eat the food off of any of the trees apart from this tree, which was the tree of knowledge. This tree had things on it that God didn't want Adam and Eve to eat. He said they could have anything in the garden except from anything from this tree. He said that if they ate from this tree, that they would know the difference between good and bad, so the difference between love and broken love. And He didn't want that for Adam and Eve. He wanted them to live in a place that was always full of love. And so Adam and Eve did as God said for quite some time, until one day there was an enemy who lived in the garden. Now, this enemy was somebody, we call him different things. Some people call him the devil or Satan, or we can call him the enemy, which means he wasn't really a nice friend. He liked to play tricks. Now, he lived before the world was made with God. And he didn't like God. And so he wanted to be as clever as God and in charge like God. And so he wanted to do his own thing. So God said that he couldn't live with him. And so he had to go and live out in the wilderness. So this enemy, who was disguised as a snake, came in to the garden one day. Adam was busy in the garden looking after all of the things as God asked him to. And Eve was busy too. But she came up to the tree of knowledge. And she met the snake, the enemy. And he said to Eve, Eve, do you really have to listen to God and not eat the fruit from this tree? And Eve said, yes, I must do as God has asked. And then the enemy said, whoa, I'm going to give you an idea. If you eat from the tree of knowledge, you will be as clever as God. Don't you want to be as clever as God? Eve thought for a moment. Maybe she did want to be as clever as God. The snake had given her an idea, and she thought it was a good idea. But it wasn't. The snake was tricking her. The snake likes to give people ideas to do things that break love. And so this day, very sadly, Eve chose to listen to the idea that the snake had given her. And she did take some fruit. And she took it and she shared it with Adam. And together, for the very first time, Adam and Eve broke love because they broke the rules that God had given them. Now, Adam and Eve didn't feel very happy anymore. They'd never felt unhappy before. They'd only ever felt love. They didn't really understand what it was they were feeling. So what they did is they hid. They hid away from God. They hoped if they hid that God wouldn't find out what they'd done. But God came into the garden to speak to Adam and Eve, and he said, because he could see everything, he said, Adam and Eve, why are you hiding from me? And out came Adam and out came Eve, and they spoke to God, and they told God what had happened, but God already knew. And God said that now Adam and Eve must go and live outside of the garden. And they would have to live in the wilderness because the garden was perfect. And they couldn't live somewhere that was perfect anymore. So they had to leave the garden behind. And Adam and Eve had to go and live out in the wilderness. Now, God still promises to be really close to Adam and Eve. He still loves them very, very much. And he still wants to look after them. But Adam and Eve need to make a choice to be close to God and to be close to each other. And Adam and Eve and all of the rest of us have to live in a world that has broken love in it. And that's sometimes very difficult. And it's hard. And God knows that. And God says to us, he wants to be close to us, but we must choose to be close to him and choose to show love to each other and love in the world. Now, this is the first part of God's big story, so we're not going to talk about the rest of God's big story yet, because in this story, these things haven't happened. So for today, we're just going to think about how the world began and what happened to mean that broken love came into the world. So I wonder if you were Adam and Eve, I wonder whether you would have managed to listen to God and ignore the snake's ideas, I wonder whether you would have eaten the fruit. I wonder if you wanted to be as clever as God. I wonder what a world would look like if there was no broken love in it. I wonder what you can do to show love in the world today, because when there is broken love in the world and we choose to show love, we can make the broken love go away. And we can always ask for God to help us with that. God's Holy Spirit is his superpower. So we can ask the Holy Spirit to come and help us to do amazing things in the world and show love instead of broken love.